beautiful St. Moritz in the Swiss Alps. It's the home of winter sliding sports. For over 125 years, they've been racing down this wooded valley between St. Moritz and Celerina below. And today, the challenge of 125 years ago remains exactly the same. For the men's skeleton, 2 runs to decide the 6th World Cup of the season, and a chance, perhaps, to put yourself in the running for a €100,000 prize. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to St. Moritz. There you can see the world's biggest ice sculpture. Alongside me is Canadian slider Melissa Hollingsworth. Mel, you raced on this track already this weekend. What's so special about St. Moritz?
Oh, well, it's the only natural track in the world where it's built from snow and ice. In the summertime, it's a cow pasture, so that's the unique thing about this track. Every year, there's things that are a little bit different. The corners are all labeled the exact same, but the profiles actually change. And in 19 years of my career, this is the trickiest St. Moritz track I have ever slid on. We're heading into corner wall here, and it can push you off to the left this year, which will skid you, slow you down as you're headed sideways into the S combinations 1 and 2. Long, sunny corner. It's a really smooth one-pressure corner headed into Nash and Dixon. And here is the legendary corner horseshoe. It is made out of concrete. It's the one that's the same all the time. Sometimes the sleds will go up and bump the roof a little bit. Here is Shamrock headed into Devil's Dyke. This is going to be where the race is won or lost this year, into Nameless. And now we have 4 consecutive right-hand corners, which if you get late into one of them, you'll be late into the next one. And as you're heading into the top speeds, around 135 kilometers an hour, you don't want to be late anywhere on this track. It will definitely bleed your speed.
And even between the final 2 corners, you can win or lose a race. We can see as much as a 1/10 of a second gained or lost by having the right line. Moritz-Celerina set the start record and the downtime record here in the first race of the weekend, because it's been a double race weekend for men's skeleton. This is their 6th World Cup. Moritz-Celerina, with victory on Friday, beg your pardon, took the lead of the World Cup from Alexander Tretyakov. Ducos now with 3 wins. And after the North American leg, Melissa saw 3 different men win: Tretyakov, Ducos, and America's Matt Antoine. Since we come back to Europe, suddenly Moritz-Celerina is firing on all 12 cylinders again.
Well, the goal this season is Sochi, and he is going to be testing all of his equipment, how his sled is set up so that he is his absolute best in just less than a month's time.
Yellow jacket Frank Rommel needs 1 more top 6 finish, either here or in Eagles. See Martin Putzer there. Some of the bobsled athletes warming up as well, because we're doing double duty, men's skeleton and 4-man bobsled today. Alexander Tretyakov will be first off. And Melissa, on any track, that's a good thing. Here, it's not necessarily a good thing, because it might be a little frosty, because it was quite cold overnight. Not -20, but down to about -9 or 10.
That's the unique thing about this track. It will get faster as the day goes on, so you want that later draw. This is an advantage for some of those guys down in like 15th and 18th, like John Montgomery.
4:75, the start record set by Alexander Tretyakov in Friday's race. Now let's see what he can produce. Can he go any quicker? Little bump in the first dip, 4:74. You can often rely on him for a new start record, and he's done it yet again.
That's not how he wants to be setting up his first corner. You can see he got pushed off to the right. The FIBT was trying to fix that groove. Obviously, the 4 runners were having some issues coming out of that groove, and Tretyakov as well had some problems. And you can see his body is moving a little bit, trying to control his sled. Now, on this St. Moritz track, there's not a lot of pressures, so you should not see these athletes moving at all. If you see even the slightest bit of movement, you know that they are getting uncomfortable on their sled.
I spoke to Noelle Pikus-Pace after yesterday's women's race. She said, first sled off on the ice, she said, I really felt the frost all the way down and thought, oh no, this is going to kill my speed. But in the end, in fact, she put in a 1/3 of a second quicker run than anyone else. Tretyakov trying to keep it quiet, but you can see his legs moving around left to right. And here they're doing 132 kilometers an hour, over 82 miles an hour. head first, chin on the ice. Melissa, you feel the speed here more than anywhere, right?
You do, and as you come into that Martineau corner, that top speed of the track, you are blinded because the track is so white and the snow on the outside is white. You're not really sure if you're still in the track. Have a look at this power and speed from Tretyakov. That's why he has start records all over the world. Smooth load onto his sled. Now he is going to be trying to have his sled go to his left. Now watch, it goes to the right, and his legs come out swinging, trying to balance himself out, and that was just how the run started for him. Very quick time, only 200ths off the track record, but we'll have to see. Guys with smoother lines, there'll be faster times.
Johnny Fairbairn of Canada joined me in the booth last week when we were in Winterberg, Germany. Let's see if he can produce a big fast start here. What did he set? 5:10. He was second off in Friday's race as well. Let's see if he can get a little quicker than that.
Oh, that groove is really tough. A 5:01, that's a great start for Fairbairn.
That's 900ths of a second quicker than he did in Friday's race.
You can see his helmet painted up with the brain because everybody pronounces his last name wrong as Fairbrain, which is suiting because he's an engineer, a very intelligent fellow. And he's chose to use a orange visor. You can see that because it's so white, it's hard to see the little bits of entrances and exits of the corners, that will pull out the angles of the corners a little bit better. Very smooth for Fairbairn. We saw Tretyakov moving around a lot on his sled. Horseshoe, you want to have that height and come smooth out. And he was much faster than Tretyakov. Tretyakov was only 99 kilometers an hour.
Very much faster. And again, as you say, just essentially lying there doing nothing is the style here in Samoritz.
Yes and no. Little subtle movements will go a long ways on this natural track, and he's ahead of Tretyakov.
Wow. And
this is
2 kilometers
amazing.
an hour quicker. That's a really good run from Johnny Fairbairn. Superb, 108.99. Well, it was colder than it has been pretty much all week overnight, so the track habitually should be faster today than they've seen before.
Wow, that very well could have been the best heat of his life, with Tretyakov being the current world champion on this track.
A 9th, 2 8th, and 2 6th place results so far from Johnny Fairbairn.
Have a look as he's going into Horseshoe. He wants that middle entrance so he can get the natural height up near the roof. You want to stay off the roof, of course. Straight line. Perfect. Form, effortless.
Well, is he just starting to peak at the right time? Looks like it, doesn't it? Next up, Frank Rommel of Germany. Spoke to him in Winterberg. He was 100th out of 6th place. He needs one more 6th place finish to be allowed to go to the Games by the German Federation. And he was 10th on Friday. Let's see if he can produce a bit more here.
5:17. You know, we have the option of using the right or the left groove. I'm surprised that these guys are continuing to use that right groove with how badly it's pulling and pushing their sleds into the wall. St. Moritz, with it being a natural track, you can actually see how rough those walls are. So when you take a hit, you don't just glide off of them. It actually bleeds your speed quite a bit.
The only problem with coming in from the left is that then you're going more headlong into that little dink. If you start on the right, you're sort of following the wall a little, but yeah, it's so important for the skeleton. Oh, and Rommel right up by the woodwork.
We were
Half
just
a
talking
second
about
back.
that.
Well, he's got better speed than Tretyakov, so maybe the height there will help him close a little bit on the leader, Johnny Fairbairn of Canada. See him steering with his head there as well as the shoulders, the knees, the toes.
When you have that type of impact, you're going straight up at 100 kilometers an hour.
Wow, quicker than Fairbairn.
That is amazing that he has that kind of speed.
109.57, he's in 3rd place, 6/10ths back. That's not going to help his top 10 ambitions. But Mel, you know, there's 2 ways well, there's a number of ways of doing Horseshoe, but height and then dive bombing out is going to accelerate you, but you run the risk, A, of hitting the woodwork and slowing yourself down.
Have a look at that. His bumper took most of it,
Yep.
but his shoulder probably followed through. And he did a great job of not completely panicking and steering down immediately, because there's an extra pressure on the exit that would then rise. And then he could have a big hit on the entrance of telephone.
Oh, Sophia Griebel on the right there and Anja Huber on the left. Oh, that was close. Now, we talk about Frank Rommel needing to qualify. None of the other German athletes, if they need 3 top 6 finishes, as we think might be the case, are going to go. Because Alexander Krökel, former junior world champion, has not had a top 6 finish this season. I beg your pardon. No, he hasn't. The closest he got was 7th. And that means that German men's skeleton, Melissa Hollingsworth, is in all sorts of disarray.
It is, and those types of qualifications are disheartening when you're representing your country for 4 years straight and it's something that's internally you just need to make a certain standard. These are still the best skeleton sliders in the world, and being top 6 at a World Cup event, that is really, really difficult. So really hope we see a full German team here despite their internal qualification standards.
Well, Krökel nicely out of Nash and Dixon, right in the middle. He's going from middle to low line, and that's the exit he was looking for into telephone. No dramas. 101.3, fastest speed we've seen so far.
And that's great form of Krökel. He was so fast in training. He was leading training, but training is training and racing is racing. And he was very disappointed with his race on Friday, looking for that top 6.
23-year-old policeman from Oberhof, 135 kilometers an hour now. Is this the track just giving up its speed finally? Good run into second place. I mean, this is a changeable beast, this track. As it warms up the day, it gets quicker and quicker and quicker. So we may now see that these guys are benefiting a fraction from that extra pace.
The technique, the one-handed start, invented by the Canadians. Again, his sled pulling to his right. He's leaning away, trying to counter it so it doesn't push him into that left wall on the exit.
There is a definite bump at the end of the groove. It bounces the sled up. Let's watch the next one. This is Martins Dukurs of Latvia, our race winner on Friday and our new World Cup points leader. So will the yellow vest sit as easily this season as it has so many other times for him? Look again at the end of the grid. It's still that bump, and it does kick the sled. Watch the toes, no touches on the ice. The sled is just going absolutely straight, and of course, that's because Martins is so relaxed and is not making any flinches to steer it.
Sometimes I'm in absolute awe when I watch this man slide down tracks because he is so quiet on his sled, rarely breaking form, steering at those optimal points, just looking where he needs to go. A little bit early into horseshoe, flattens him quite a bit.
Nice low line, gets a great exit on the way through telephone, Shamrock, and Devil's Dyke doesn't seem to have bothered him this year like it's bothering everybody else.
No, smooth lines, and look at how far ahead he is. Have we talked about the Triple Crown yet?
We're about to. 102.4 kilometers an hour at the last speed trap, 135.6. That's getting quicker and quicker and quicker. Oh, and a mistake at the line, but 108.14, a new track record between Martineau and Portago. A little brush on the wall can rob you of at least a 10th. So the Triple Crown, last year, 3 races were selected for the Triple Crown. The man, woman, or team that won in each of the 5 disciplines could win up to €100,000. Let's take a look again as he gets kicked out at the end of this groove.
Now, they all know that it is pulling to the right. He handles it great with his toe out to the side, immediately back into form.
The deal this year is you've not only got to win the races, you've got to be fastest in all 6 heats, though. Hey, Martins Dukurs, our leader here. Yelena Nikitina in her familiar red bobble hat from the Russian team. Had a good race yesterday, and she's here to cheer on Chudi, Sergei Chudinov, the second of our Russian athletes. Really seems to be having quite a strong season, Chudi, as well. And, of course, with Sochi coming headlong at them, you know, they've got to avoid being a deer in the headlights, the Russians, and really just focus on their own game.
Well, I know exactly what that's like, to have the Olympics in your home country, and that's the only focus. But they're handling that pressure just fine.
Chudinov again looking smooth and relaxed. Tall, heavy athlete, and that mass must help dampen the impact, the vibrations in the sled, does it?
It really does. Well, gravity. This is a gravity sport, obviously. That was really interesting tight form. I'm not too sure why he was so uncomfortable on his sled, because his height was really nice, but he was steering very hard on the exit, and you could hear his runners grabbing the ice.
So has he gone for a setup that may not necessarily be ideal? Is he skidding more than he was expecting?
Oh, and that's the first time we've seen that hit, and you can see that hurts his kilometers per hour at 132.
Still quicker than teammate Tretyakov, and he goes into third place ahead of Krökel and Tretyakov and Frank Rommel in sixth position. It is Martin Stucos, the leader, from Johnny Fairbairn. That was an odd run from Tudy, wasn't it? I mean, what was going on in Horseshoe? That was a bizarre line.
Yeah, nice height, but he steers down, and you can see he panics because his toe comes on the ice. And it actually goes the opposite direction than he wanted to, because he steered down when he was headed down, and then that pressure came back on, and his sled came back up.
He was hung up so late, wasn't he? He was still gaining height when he should have been diving out. Well, our race winner, round 3 in Lake Placid, was America's Matt Antoine. Back on the podium last week again in, I beg your pardon, 4th in Winterberg. Back on the podium on Friday here in St. Moritz. And does a podium in St. Moritz count for double in your estimation, in your morale, compared to some other tracks? I guess it kind of does.
It feels so good. You could see that Matt used that right groove, but he put his left runner in the right groove so that he could have a little bit more of an approach, a different approach into that corner. Again, it still pulled him into that wall.
Well, if everybody is doing it, then I guess honours are fairly even. If somebody goes off extreme left, then we'll see whether they win, lose, or draw out of it. Matt, 1500s behind from the start. And now, habitually, once we've had Martin Stucos down the track, everybody else looks like they're not going as quickly as they actually are.
Well, there's still silver and bronze medal that everybody else is racing for, or those Olympic qualifications or personal best, just the confidence that you need heading into Sochi. So the rest of the time still do matter quite a bit.
Good speed. You can hear little scratches and scrapes, and that would be the toes or the helmet dragging.
With Matt, it's going to be his toes. There's not a lot of pressure on this track where you're going to see the helmets bouncing up and down in the ice and dragging. It's very smooth, which is nice for our noggins.
1:34.0, great speed, 83.5 miles an hour, and a 1:09.05 into third place. Now he's 9 tenths behind Martin Stucos, but second place Johnny Fairbairn is 8 tenths behind. There's only 600ths second to third, and only 800ths third to fourth.
You can see, look at his sled. The bobsled lines are quite a bit outside of his feet where he's running. He chose to put that left runner in the right groove so he can attack that first kink. It still pulls him a little bit. His bumpers scrape on the ice. That very well could have been just the couple hundreds that he needed to go ahead of Fairbairn.
Trying to look for the least worst approach down into that first kink. Well, next up, the man who led the first heat on Friday. Martin Stucos went off behind his brother, and Thomas just set shattering pace early on. Again, he goes with the right runner in the right groove, and that looks to be the least worst of the options.
Great form from Thomas. So quiet. Straight lines going into wall.
He's the older of the two brothers, 32 to Martin's 29. And it's such a great combination. Imagine if you had your sister here with you, constantly racing, you'd be exchanging notes, you'd be spurring each other on. And Martin's always says, you know, if there's any secret to these Latvian brothers, it's that they are brothers and they work together to, you know, sibling rivalry is a great thing sometimes.
It is, and it was great to see Thomas first after that race on Friday, after that first heat. Would love to see him overtake his brother, but I think they really do feel like they win together.
Do you know what? I think we might be looking at another Stucos 1-2 here. This is a really good run. Fourth fastest start. He's in second, 1:33.5. Good speed, not quite as quick as Matt Antoine on the last run. Second place nonetheless, and he's halved the gap almost to his brother. Well, the Latvian coaches, that must be a tough job. You just smile and go, yeah, hey, another one too. It's a great job if you can get it. Well, 5700s behind Martin Stucos. There's a couple of errors there that he'd like to tidy up, definitely.
As athletes, we are perfectionists, so, you know, it looked like a perfect run to us watching the TV screen, but you want to go faster.
Now, both of Japan's sliders had a big day on Friday. Hiro Takahashi and his younger compatriot, Yuki Sasahara. Takahashi, the older of the two Japanese, now 29 years old, from Miyagi, which is in northern Japan. And, of course, the legendary Katsuhiro Koshi-san coaching now.
Have a look at that sun that's starting to hit the track right now. That was a great shot from the top. And now we're going to start seeing these sleds blaze, which, yes, these are the guys that are not in the top 10, but it gives them an amazing advantage to give that opportunity to get into the top 10.
Yeah, the track is going to speed up all the way through. And that's one of the things here. We've got a big field of 29 sleds. 9 won't get a second run, but it's not necessarily the last 9 in the draw, because they may have a slightly quicker sheet of ice on which to play. The 5:01 getaway from Hiro, that's the 6th quickest start. And that's a nice looking exit from Horseshoe as well. Tiny corrections, but good speed, 1:01.3. He's as fast as Martins, anybody but Martins Ducourse through there. So again, another standout run.
What an amazing season, and it would just be such a dream come true for him to come into Sochi and have a great result.
0.89 behind, he's in 6th position, ahead of Rommel and Tretyakov. And there's 2 big scalps, 7 spots, so he slips behind Krukl, but he is in front of Tretyakov and Rommel. That's a really nice run from Hiro Takahashi. And Melissa, you know, if you've got 2 races on a weekend and the first goes really well, you've got to come in ready to just go out and rock it on Sunday.
Yes, that confidence. Coming out of Devil's Lake, look at his head and shoulders coming up a little bit because the pressure releases and you are still trying to see where you're going, but sometimes it'll just pop you up off your sled and you'll feel all that airflow and instantly you want to get your shoulders back on the sled.
I think he might have had his shoulders up down towards the bottom. 1:32.9, not the greatest speed. Now, Dom Parsons had a bit of a tough day on Friday. Let's see if he can produce the speed that has been part of the feature of his standout season. Bronze medal to start the season in Calgary, Canada, and a 4:95 getaway. Well, Dom, the newest member of Great Britain's World Cup team, 26-year-old student originally from London. Came on to the World Cup second half of last year. Again, to start the season, your first full World Cup season and heading into the Olympics with a medal on the World Cup podium has got to have given him a lot of confidence.
Well, Dom is one of the fastest starters in the world. And there is something to be said for being new on the tour and and he's just having a bit of a rough ride down here. Little hits and bumps that will cost him really late into Nameless. He's going to fly off a Nameless.
97.5, no speed at all. And you've got to be so relaxed on this track. It's got to flow, and if it doesn't, you're in all sorts of trouble.
Dom doesn't look as relaxed. We could see that just in the upper portion of the track.
Wow, a 60.28. His first slide on Friday when he was first off was a 58.58. That's a bit of a nightmare, and I'm afraid that, in fact, it's not 60 seconds, is it 70 seconds? I think Dom might be in all sorts of trouble with that.
Coming out of Horseshoe, using toes, just bumps the wall. Look at the ice fly off the track, and it puts him through the belly of Telephone. And now his sled is going to start to rise, and the pressure will let off, and then that's a tough thing to correct.
Yeah.
Now, what's going on here? He might have hurt himself.
Yeah, I don't think he's feeling too great after that. I think that might be one to walk away from. And that might put him in trouble getting into the top 20 for the second heat. Blasting off the top of the heat, my partner in the booth yesterday for the first heat of the women's race, Erik Nielsen. Viessmann, again having a little jink there off that first Nameless corner.
Now, Erik needs to relax. He's such a big guy, he doesn't even recognize his own strength. So if he's a little bit tense on his sled, that sled will be feeling it and will be pushing into the ice, and it'll just be causing friction all the way down the track. He had some great runs on Friday where he was sitting 5th in that first heat, and then he fogged up on that second heat, and it dropped him back. So he actually has shampoo in his visor to try and help that condensation from all the sweat from his head.
Yeah.
Help his visibility.
Well, that's an old motorcycle racing trick to put washing up liquid or something on to stop it steaming up, because when you're doing 85 miles an hour head first, you kind of need to know where you're going.
And things are looking very smooth with Eric. If you would just relax his neck a little bit, put that head down.
1:34.3, that's very good speed from Eric Nielsen. This is going to be maybe a top 6 finish if he avoids the kink between those two walls. He hit it yesterday, on Friday rather. 1:09.21, 7th place, that's better. Again, anytime you're ahead of Tretyakov, that's a good run. He ties to the 100th with Hiro Takahashi. And you see, now he's got his head down.
We do not have brakes in this sport. If you're wondering why there's those foam pads in the outrun, that's so we don't get launched off the end of the track.
It's to stop you going all the way back up the hill to St. Moritz. Martin Stukel's our race leader from Brother Thomas. Johnny Fairbairn of Canada, standout run to go 3rd, ahead of Matt Antoine and Sergei Chudinov. 10 of our 29 sliders already down the ice. Well, next up is... let's listen to the announcer. Kylie Tress, as he's known here in St. Moritz. Kyle Tress, otherwise, I think he was christened to his mum and dad. It's always nice to have a little bit of name mangling going on.
Oh, and Kyle is having a tough start. You can see we don't have enough speed. We're only going about 50 kilometers an hour in this top flat portion of the track. So when you're trying to lean off the wall, by the time your sled reacts, it's already too much, and then you're bouncing off of each wall.
Well, you say only, but this is from a sprint start. You're doing 30 miles an hour. So in fact, you're above the legal speed limit in town by the time you get out of King 1. That's the kind of acceleration that this sport produces. Already doing 65 miles an hour now, and accelerating very hard here, Melissa. From Devil's Dyke on, it's just a rush of speed.
It is. It's such a unique feeling. And Kyle had a career best finish last Friday, 6th. So he'll be wanting to improve on that or maintain that, use that confidence that he can compete with the best in the world.
134 kilometers an hour, 83 miles an hour. And a 1:09.48 top 10 for him. As you say, 2 really standout runs. I mean, the first one was just the golden nugget that laid the basis for success in Friday's race.
Here's Horseshoe. This is the first athlete we've actually seen his helmet bouncing off the ice. We could hear that in the regular speed. Coming around it a little bit, angled a bit too much into telephone. You can see it picks his body up, turns the direction down into the belly of the corner.
There is Kyle Tress, 5th place on Friday. John Daly of the USA had a bit of a diametrical opposite race. He was 23rd on Friday's first. He didn't make the cut. Chat to him this morning. He seems pretty relaxed and happy and up for it. So let's see if he gets a good run. 4:96. Well, he's giving it all the beans at the start. This is go fast or go home, isn't it?
It is, and we see him sometimes with magic and then crashing, like you say, not getting a second run, but that's okay because at least he's learning everything about him and his setup and what he needs to do so he can be the best in Sochi.
There's going to be some of that as well from John Montgomery. Again, chatted to him this morning, and I said, what's the plan for today? And he said, win it or bin it. I think basically go fast or park it. Through Horseshoe. Medium line from John Daly. Again, he's looking to get that exit as smooth as he can. 1:01.1, so that worked quite well.
Oh, a little bit of skidding and Leighton and Nameless.
A little bit of scratching and scraping. Now, everybody will set their sled up individually, and it looks like his is just skidding around rather more than he can cope with.
But not bad time-wise. He's only 0.9 behind Martins.
Yeah, 7th place at the moment. And 9th at the bottom. Well, he was up to 4th place exiting Horseshoe, and it sort of skidded away so much at the bottom. Now, is there much he can do about that? Because we understand with a whole 4-man field going down, before these guys get to the ice, it's going to be a lot more polished.
Yes, and typically with this ice, as early as this race has started, it's sticky. Even though it's cold, it's sticky, so you can get away with a setup that is less control. And then that way, when it warms up for your second heat, you've got everything set up perfectly for you. But with bobsleds coming down, that'll be telling a different story.
So he might be looking at making some changes. Christopher Groth of Germany, he's the third of our German sliders, just 21 years old. Started ski jumping at the age of 6 and swapped to skeleton later on in sports high school when he was 16. Imagine that, 6-year-old son's going ski jumping. His mum must have been thrilled when he took up skeleton.
And have a look at his shoulders and his head. He looks relaxed. And he's looking exactly where he wants to go, which is great. If you look at the wall, your sled is slowly going to be moving towards that wall, so you got to make sure you're disciplined and look where you want to be going.
It's that thing when you're riding your push bike down the edge of the road and you're just drawn magnetically into the road off the curb. Yeah. I always say there are magnets in the wall, and when you look at the wall, it activates them, and in you go.
Very high line and horseshoe, which puts him directly into that wall before telephone.
He looked high and late, and 98.5 kilometers an hour. That's very poor there, I'm afraid. 61 miles an hour should be 2 miles an hour quicker, which sounds like nothing, but Melissa, when you're playing with hundreds, it's a lifetime.
It really is, and that is the difference between achieving your Olympic dream or not.
Well, these guys so young. It does look as though Christopher Groth and Alexander Krökel won't get through to the games. And actually, when you're outside even the top 10 in a World Cup field, you think, okay, well, you can see some logic there in the Germans not sending guys who maybe aren't ready.
And it's very shocking for us to see the Germans not up into that podium finishes. He comes around horseshoe, bounces off the entrance of telephone. Have a look at that. The ice chipping off the wall pushes him into that belly. Now he's going to get all the height on the exit. It's a really hard line to recover from.
Yeah. Always looks a little bit perplexed when he has a run like that. Next up, Christian Bromley, 18th, and he says last season on ice as a World Cup slider. His 18th season in the World Cup, so he's been doing this over 20 years now. Had a really good run in Friday's race, his best of the season by a very considerable margin to get 7th spot. He said he's starting to feel a little bit more at one with that Bromley Tech sled, and he said the speed is starting to come as well from the legs. He was injured in the summer. 5.06, same as 21-year-old Christopher Groth here, which is not bad for a man who's old enough to be his dad.
Yeah, exactly. And St. Moritz is Kristen's style of track. Him and his partner, Shelley Rudman, you always seeing them flirting or on the podium here. Shelley's the world champion from last year, won a bronze medal yesterday in our race, the women's race.
In fact, that's Shelley's worst result in 5 years. She's had 3 golds and a silver in the previous 4 races. So, but yes, you're right, and there is something special about this place. It is Britain's spiritual home as well as ice sliding's spiritual home.
Ooh, a little bit of height there on the end of Shamrock that hits him into Devil's Lake, but handles the exit perfectly.
102.4, the only man to get that speed was Martins Dukos. Christian Bromley from the 11th fastest start is 3rd at the moment. Can he challenge Thomas Dukos? 133.8 is very good speed indeed. This is a blinding run from Bromley. 3rd place. That is a really solid run, and Shelley Rudman responds accordingly. 1:08.85. Only 3 athletes have cracked the 1:09 barrier, and Christian Bromley, with the 2 Dukos brothers, is the 3rd.
Wow, coming out of Shamrock. Oh, I think I'm wrong. There we go. That's the Shamrock. Bumping before
See,
Devil's
the left
Dyke.
elbow is high up. He's really putting in a big steer to get the line right. And he's often very physical on his sleds, isn't he? I mean, that's one of his trademarks, is he moves around an awful lot. He always looks actually like a Cresta runner, wrestling the sled, because he likes it loose. He likes to ride a wild sled. 3rd place from Christian Bromley, behind Martins and Thomas Dukos. Blasting off from the top of the hill is Austria's Matthias Guggenberger, the older of our 2 Austrian sliders, 29 years old now from Innsbruck. Came very late to the sport, only started age 21. We've got junior world champions that are younger than that.
You can see we're not seeing those hits coming out of the groove now. We saw that bump at the exit of the groove, so maybe with the sleds coming down, more sleds, and the sun shining on it, they've actually chipped away that bump.
Now I'm getting confused. I read the wrong Austrian. We've got two of them side by side. This is Raphael Meyer. He's the 19-year-old Austrian. I beg your pardon, he's 20 years old now. His brother slides for Austria in the bobsled. His younger brother, Sammy, is also a skeleton slider, age 14. And his dad, Meyer's dad, also coaches the Austrian bobsleigh team. So it's a bit of a sliding dynasty.
Listen to how smooth those sleds are.
Well, that's one of the features of this track, isn't it? Was he hits the wall on the inside, he dived out too early out of Portago. One of the features of this track is it's not in a concrete canal suspended above the ground. It doesn't resonate. It takes a lot more than a skeleton sled to make this mountain vibrate. Well, Raphael Meyer, 14th place. Not a great run.
No, little mistakes here and there. Going into horseshoe, has a lot of height. Look at that angle, right up into the roof, but doesn't touch it, but hung on a bit too much, pushes him over. Slight pickup on the entrance of telephone. And those little angle mistakes, that's where the speed goes.
So that was Raphael Meyer. This is Matthias Guggenberger with the chrome dome. What a great view of the track you get from his helmet there. And the Austrian Eagle, Willi Schneider sled. And a lot of nations, Mel, you're free to pick and choose a sled that really works with you. A lot of your colleagues use the Sate sled built in Alberta. You use one built by your cousin, Ryan Davenport, but you've tried Bromley sleds. I mean, it's as individual as getting a shoe to fit you properly.
It is so individual, and there's such a mental game with this sport. Yes, we're athletes with how strong and fast you have to be to push the sled to gain every 100th at the top of the track, but then you have to be able to find the setup that works for you and your sliding style.
Talk about the mental game. What about Kristen Bromley, a couple of sleds back? Oh dear, you have a really good day on Friday. You come into Sunday so full and so juiced up and ready to go.
That was a big hit, late in the nameless.
Well, below 100 kilometers an hour, there's only a couple of athletes that have been in that position. So he's slow for speed, and that's a shame. He's had a really good start. 1:31.4 again, 3 kilometers down on where he really would like to be. And he now moves into 14th place. 14th and 15th for the two Austrians. Not great. Two Swiss sliders on Friday had an absolute nightmare, and I have to say, Lukas Kummer was not looking full of confidence this morning either.
Close to the roof, that's typically the line that you want in horseshoe, but it naturally has been giving us that line. So now he crosses too much, and big direction change with his sled. Look at all the marks on the short wall. At 100 kilometers an hour, when you're hitting a wall like that, it hurts.
Big smile from Googie. I think that's trying to cover the pain. Now, John Montgomery, he is going to pull out all the stops, absolutely everything. He said, I have got nothing to lose and everything to gain. I'm just going to go for it in the biggest way imaginable. This is our Olympic champion. Let's see what Monty can produce. I know that Dana will be watching back home, desperate to see a really big day. And do you know what? I don't think there's a single person here in St. Moritz or watching that doesn't want a really big day for John Montgomery.
Oh, everyone's a fan of John Montgomery. How can you not be? Yes, his wife Darla's at home watching right now, my former teammate, who also was on the World Cup podium in her career.
1500s away from the fastest start. He had good first corner momentum as well. This is a nice, quiet run. Of course, one of John's things over the last 2 or 3 years is he's been developing his own sled to try and custom build it to fit. 99.7, it's all starting to drift away a little. He needs to be really fast down the bottom here, and he's riding a bucking Bronco, Mel.
Yeah, and that's really tough to do individually, to find a sled starting from scratch in only 4 years. You only have minimal runs, but he's the only one that is testing the sled. It was very risky for John to do, but that's what he felt like he needed to do to defend his gold medal.
14th place. We've got a slew of 14th places just come in. 1.5 seconds away. That will be enough to see him into the second heat, you should think, and maybe a chance to go away, think about setup and produce something that's just a fraction more controllable, but the body English doesn't reflect well.
Started to steer down. He needed a little bit more height so it could be straight. When he starts to steer down, that pressure, it hangs him on the corner a bit too long, and he has this bump going into telephone.
He's already skidding when he comes down into the wall, isn't he?
So a hit plus skidding through the pressure at 100 kilometers an hour.
Listen, as a rodeo rider, you need to give him some bucking bronco tips there. maybe he needs a little bit more than a rodeo rider's advice. Ben Sanford of New Zealand with the Kiwi iconography on his helmet. Loads of really stunning helmets turning out for this Olympic season. And Ben Sanford, 6'7" and change, the tallest man on tour, and still one of the most successful here. A slew of podiums in the last few years in St. Moritz, but last year in the World Championships couldn't put it together. And on Friday, there was a lot of long levers skating around behind him, as there was there.
Yes, and that's the tough thing about this long, flat portion at the top of the track. Again, you get stuck on that right wall, and it pushes you off, it draws you back in, and you're fighting all the way. You have to let the sled go.
Well, the first heats on Friday, everybody was down in the 58, 59 seconds. Today, we're a minute 8, a minute 9. That's how much different the track is, Melissa, and yet the speeds are actually higher at the bottom. It's perverse, isn't it? Slower at the top, but faster at the bottom, and Ben's having a bit of a Monty-style wild ride. Maybe the track is just dramatically different in feel from how it was during training.
It very well could be. You need subtle steers on this track. And sometimes when something big happens, like you have a hit that you're not used to, your body will automatically react those instincts, and it creates such a big steer in the sled. And it's hard to get back into the flow and the rhythm.
1:10.64, and his first heat on Friday was a 59:12. I mean, the times are just totally different, totally different.
It's going to be really disappointing for Ben, being he's actually medaled here, a World Cup medalist on this track, and by the looks of things, might not be getting a second run.
No, there's every opportunity. I'm afraid that he might be watching it. Yeah, not looking good. He's had a silver and a bronze here 2 and 3 years ago. That's not a great run. And, you know, this is the same ice. It's just 48 hours later, and yet it's 10 seconds slower. Beg your pardon, no. Yeah. So 58, no, 2 seconds slower, yes.
Very quiet on his sled. That's what you want to be seeing from the athletes in this upper portion, all the way down the track, ideally.
Sasahara was such a good run on Friday. And again, we talked about the confidence that that must bring. If you go away on Friday afternoon, you think, yeah, I've really got this place. Then you come back on Sunday, hopefully with a bit more of that.
You can see that the sun is coming out, and there's little pockets of rays hitting certain points of the track. And that's going to melt the ice a little bit, speed it up, create a soft point.
Yeah, good speed, 101 kilometers an hour into Devil's Dyke, 63 miles an hour, and nice and smooth down there. You can almost hear him whistle past, and there's the result, 1:34.7. This isn't just a good run, this is a really good run from him. 15th position. Well, maybe the result not quite what he would have hoped for, but the speed at the bottom showed that if the top half of the track wasn't great, the bottom half he really had nailed. 1:34.7, there's only been a couple of athletes that have gone as quick as that.
Yes, especially with his start time.
20th at the start, 15th at the bottom. That's a big smile. Martin Stukors of Latvia leads from brother Thomas. Kristen Bromley lies third with 20 sleds down the ice. 20 sleds already completed the course, and that means here in St. Moritz the race is full. For the remaining 9 athletes, they have to push somebody out of the race. This is dog-eat-dog territory, Melissa Hollingsworth. And the first is local slider Alexandros Kefalas. Greek father, Swiss mother. He lives just down the road in Samiden, just 1 stop away from St. Moritz on the train. So this is home ice for him. Will that help?
5:29, not the strongest starters, but, you know, we might be seeing some nice lines from him. Like you said, his home track.
Well, Yuki Sasahara of Japan just started 5:28, came down into 15th spot. So let's see if he can produce a similar run.
You can see some of that dust, the snow was kicking up behind him, and while he had skidded off of that corner.
He's in the red, that means he's behind our race leader. Started 21st on the split times out of Sunny, already into the race in 19th. Remains 19th out of Horseshoe. Speed 101.6, that's good enough to maintain that spot. Let's see if he can get 134s down at the bottom of the track, maybe even up towards 135. It's a pretty smooth-looking run.
It looks great. He's so comfortable. It sounds good. We're not hearing the runners go sideways.
134.1, that'll be enough to put him into the race, and Ben Sanford gets knocked out from 20th place. Kefalas is 16th. He's not absolutely safe, but he's in for the moment. 109.76. Ben Sanford is the first of our athletes who gets cut, and that leaves Dom Parsons of Great Britain on the bubble.
You can see he skids off this corner just a little bit. See all that snow that's kicking up behind him? And that, I suspect, we will see quite a bit in the second run as that sun and those bobsleds pack down the ice.
Well, Lucas Kummer had a nightmare on Friday, didn't make the race, and now he starts outside of the top 20. He was 25th out of the 29 sleds, and he has got to produce something here. This is his home track, 7th fastest start, but he's got to get Horseshoe nailed.
And that's the mental game, because Lucas is one of the fastest starters in the world. He was leading training this week. Everybody was trying to learn from him. And it just comes down to that pressure and those nerves and learning how to deal with that as an athlete in high-performance sport. Can make it or break it for every athlete.
He just looked like somebody had run over his dog at the finish on Friday. He was absolutely crushed. Now then, he takes a relatively conservative line through Horseshoe, but that pays off. He doesn't take big hits. Not great speed. 101 is really where he'd need to be. 11th place at the moment, so in the race, unless he parks it monumentally somewhere down at the bottom, and that's all but impossible. Brush on the wall, but 136. It's not great speed, but he's going to make the heat, and that is a huge weight off his shoulders. 12th place. Thank goodness he's in. Nicky Grunberger gives the thumbs up. He had his head in his hands on Friday.
There we go. That was the Lucas that we saw all week in training. So he can take a big, deep breath, and maybe the second heat.
Let it fly.
Yeah. Might have been controlling things a little bit too much because he didn't have the speeds that we were expecting, especially with that fast start and such clean lines.
I think you're absolutely right. I think this was a run to lay up and guarantee a second heat and then let it fly. This was not the run for taking chances. I think he was ultra conservative there, and that paid off. He's got the speed. He knows he's got the speed, but it's releasing it. Now, Joe Cicchini of Italy, from born and bred in Canada, from Italian parentage, so well known to the Canadian athletes. And again, a Willi Schneider sled.
In a 5 flat, that's very competitive for Joe. Yes, he did slide for Canada, but had this opportunity to perhaps qualify for Italy at the Olympic Games.
Well, only his second World Cup start. A little skid. And again, he's not going to be the most experienced of the athletes here in St. Moritz, and so some of the subtleties of the track changes will be lost on him, but it's a long track to learn to get it right in just half a dozen practice runs.
Yes, and not, ooh, and he hits the roof just like Frank Rommel did.
97.3 kilometers an hour. All of that scratching and scraping, all those little corrections, slowing him down, and all those big corrections are like anchors being thrown out the back of the sled.
It is. When your run starts like that, it is really difficult to try and fix it. You can see that he was taking a huge risk with his setup, trying to have very little control.
Well, he's gone for speed, and the track perhaps is a little wilder than he was expecting. 23rd spot, 1:10.75, so no second heat for him either. Dom Parsons out of the race, Ben Sanford out of the race, and Joe Cicchini out of the race as well. Dom Parsons 21st on Friday, does not get a second heat here either, and
up into the roof. Might have some slivers there in his shoulder.
You know, that's something you don't think about too often in ice sliding, is having splinters out of the woodwork, but it happens here occasionally. That was a rough ride for Joe Cicchini, doesn't get a second heat. 24th, head first Ed Smith, and he turned his season around in a very big way on Friday. He'd struggled all through his second World Cup year, had not made the cut anywhere until Friday when he posted a 12th place result. Let's see some more of the same. Let's get that confidence back. 5:09, and not a bad run off the kink.
That would be great if he could have another race like he did on Friday. Take advantage of this late start, this quicker ice. He was consistent in training, very fast.
And again, like Lucas Kummer, this might be the run to consolidate that, to make sure he's in the second heat, and then really try and get a little more edgy in the second.
Things are very smooth so far. Anytime you can see the athletes' bodies bouncing, you know that they're relaxed. We cannot have shocks inside of our sled, so your body has to be that shock absorber.
100.8 kilometers an hour. This should be good enough for Ed Smith.
Listen to that sled and how quiet it is.
Just turned 28. Electrician originally from Bristol in the West Country, now based around the University of Bath. 1:34.3, that's good speed. He's really just relaxed into this and let it fly. 16th place, that's good enough. He's in the race, and now he can turn on the taps for the second heat and really just let that speed come back to him. And that confidence building from Friday starting to show here again.
I think Ed could run that sled another 3 to 5 steps. He's faster than that, and that translates into tenths of a second.
Well, again, like Lucas, job one, run one, make the race. Run two, let's let it go. And you may well see him running further and deeper down to that first kink in that second heat. The confidence needs to come.
Exactly.
Next up then for Italy is Mattia Gaspari, another World Cup rookie this season. Their regular guys, Marco Zoccolan and Giovanni Molisano, not fit and making the team. And so these two young guys, Cicchini,
just flirting with that right wall.
Italy's skeleton program is struggling to find its feet at the moment. 5:11 getaway, 19th quickest of the 24 sleds who have gone down so far. 18th place at the moment. Nice exit from Sonny. Keep it smooth now. He could end up in the race.
So many aspects to this sport, obviously the start, the speed, the power of the athlete, the equipment, the driving abilities, and obviously aerodynamics. Now have a look at his bib. You can see in this shot, it is fluttering behind him. Yes, that's not where he's first encountering the airflow of his head and his shoulders, but still, there could be little bit of dirty air back there, and you want everything as tight as possible for aerodynamics, because this is a speed sport.
This is going to be close. He's dropped into 22nd place. Will he get back into the race? He does not. So Raphael Meyer and Matthias Guggenberger, 20th and 19th for Austria. Just hang on. He was in the race, just down to about Devil's Dyke, and then couldn't hold the speed, and maybe just a little too much of a conservative setup on the sled. If there's a bigger contact patch, more runner on the ice mill, you have much more control, but much more drag as well.
Yeah, it has to be that controlled chaos.
Martin Stuckel's our race leader from Brother Thomas. Kristen Bromley lies in third place. We've got 4 sleds still to go in our 29 field to make this race. John Farrow's musical preferences are fairly obvious for anyone to see. He likes a bit of heavy metal, clearly. The Aussie starting from 26th spot, recovering from a dreadful sprinting injury in Lake Placid in 2011 that tore his knee to shreds and his hamstring. He's now racing without the little carbon cast that he had on all last year and getting a little better, but watching him trying to move his foot is not much fun, I have to say. It just looks painful.
That was absolutely devastating when he had that injury. He was sliding so well in Lake Placid that year. It just looked like he was going to be this strong force for Australia, and then all of a sudden, major surgery, sitting on the sideline, watching everybody compete. But he very well could be earning himself a spot in Sochi, which is his ultimate dream.
Yeah, absolutely. 101.9, very good speed. 24th at the start. Like I said, he doesn't walk comfortably. Sprinting must be a nightmare. He's gone from 24th to 17th to 14th now. This is where he's starting to come alive. 1:33.9, good speed, 13th place. Top 12 for John Farrow, 13th. What a run, what a run. No wonder Eric Benotas looks happy, a former winner on this track in World Cup, Eric.
Wow, so impressive to go from a 24th ranked start time because of his injury that he has, not having that control with his foot, down to a 13th rank. So smooth. Have a look at those lines on the track. You can now see a little bit of a skid going into Nameless. That's where these races are going to be won and lost down in Devil's Dyke.
Come on, John, let's see the smile. That was the run of your season so far, mate. And we had one of those in the first heat on Friday from Ander Mirambel, the man from Barcelona. He'll be watching the TV very excitedly this afternoon. His favourite club, Espanyol, with whom he trains in Barcelona, playing Real Madrid. But first, he's got to build on Friday's confidence and great result. Little wriggle into the first dink. And these slower starts aren't necessarily going to stop you performing. Noel Piker's pace, slowest in the women's field, ended up winning the race by a decent margin. Ander had a really good run, fringes of the top 12 in the first heat on Friday. Let's see what he can produce here. He needs to be so still and relaxed.
And he's looking in that form. Things in the top where he could have been skidding off of those corners. That's confidence.
He said it's funny how people see you at home. After Winterberg, they were saying, what's he doing? After Friday, they were saying, he's a hero. You know, it's very tough to deal with that balance. 101 kilometers an hour, that's decent speed. He's now in the race. And that's the first step. Again, get that second heat. And then maybe flirt a little with the speed in the second run. 17th position at the moment, 1:34.2. The Flying Meatball is having another great run. 16th position for Ander Mirambel. That sends Matthias Guggenberger onto the bench along with his Austrian teammate Raphael Meyer. And look at the brakes there, the air brakes out down the side of the track. Ander Mirambel was, you could hear him from here, from the top of the track after his first heat on Friday, and that's another goodie.
That's great for Ander. He's going to be so pumped. Handles this kink fairly well. Legs moving a little bit crazy, but he got through. Look at that smile.
Yeah, baby. Great run from Ander Mirambel. The Spanish team of one is delighted. Now for Yves-Pascal Oswald, returning to World Cup action after 2 seasons away. Missed out on Winterberg last week. He just wasn't quite strong enough, had a little bit of an injury niggle, but he's back. Another Ryan Davenport sled for the rangy Swiss. 5:27, 28th of our 29 starters.
You can see he's relaxed. You can see his body moving on his sled, absorbing all those little tiny bumps on the track. He was one that I was shocked on Friday. I thought for sure he would have had a second heat. Oh, and a bump.
Yeah. Swiss skeleton just imploded on Friday. At the moment, though, they know they've got to produce a good result here. Lucas Kummer is in the race, and I think it's going to have to be the same as well from Yves Pascal, is that he's going to have to just be conservative. Unfortunately, he's got no speed at all, and he's not even threatening to make the race, and this is a real disappointment for him. Home ice, a track he knows well. Wow, it's a very major disappointment. To be on your home track and not make the second cut in either race of a weekend, that's going to be tough to come back from.
And the Swiss skeleton program has some pretty big shoes to fill with the, Gregor Sally and Maya Pedersen-Bjerre not competing anymore, both winning Olympic medals.
Yeah, World Championships, and yeah, absolutely right. Well, Andrzej Cetina of Slovenia is our last slider. He works with the same coaches that the Ducours brothers do as well, one of the Seeker Development Program athletes. Real speed fan, loves his skeleton, loves racing motorcycles, and as a day job runs the family trucking concern back home in Slovenia. This, I think, is likely to be his last season. He has been in and out of the World Cup the last 2 years. His father, unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago, and he's had to spend a lot of time keeping the business afloat. But he said he was going to dedicate this season to the Olympic Games, to preparations for Sochi. And then after that, I think he's going to have to take a second look at where life is going to lead him. 18th place at the moment. So at the moment, Andrzej is in the race. In 20th spot is Alexandros Kefalas of Greece. So ironically, it's going to be two Seeker Development Program athletes that are battling for the final spot. 108, 62.6 miles an hour. He's slipped a little to 20th place. Out of the race in 22nd spot for Andrzej Cetina. So Alexandros Kefalas may hold on. Oh, and Cetina's in trouble. He's not going to come back from that. 129 is nowhere close to being fast enough. And he will finish in 23rd or 4th position, 26th place. And Melissa, when you're doing 80 miles an hour, all of those skids, that's how, and his visor's fogged up as well. He's got the Eric Nielsen problem. And that may have compounded his problems at the bottom of the track as well.
Yes, it's already really difficult to see these corners with how white they are. So when you're fogged up, oh, it's scary.
Well, here, coming down past the road to Horseshoe, not a bad exit out of Dixon, having to work a little to get a touch more to the right to set up.
Yeah, he was working all the way down. You could see his legs going out to the side. Very early height, wanted it a little bit later. But big smile on his face. It's always fun to slide down this St. Moritz track, no matter what.
It is. It'd be more fun if there was no timing when you've had one of those kind of runs. Martin Ducours is our race leader. The first 29 sleds in the men's skeleton field have gone down the ice, and now we get into our second heat where only the fast 20 will go, and they will all go in reverse order of performance. So they'll be chasing one man, Martin Ducours of Latvia, nearly 6/10 of a second clear of his brother, who lies in second. Kristen Bromley in third position ahead of a really tight pack. Johnny Fairbairn, Matt Antoine, Sergei Chudinov, Alex Kirkel and Hiro Takahashi. And John Nielsen tied for 8th ahead of John Daly in 10th position. That is going to produce, as we've seen throughout this week in St. Moritz, some very entertaining second runs. Fastest 20 will go through. First man on the ice will be 20th finisher rather in this first heat, Alexandros Kefalas. And among them we'll see Great Britain's Ed Smith, Olympic champion John Montgomery, and Ander Marambel as well. I think will all be pulling out the stops, and Swiss Lucas Kummer, having made the race, will definitely be trying to make the top 10. Out are Austria's team. Christopher Grote here, the former junior world champion. The Italians and Dom Parsons of Great Britain also join those other athletes on the sidelines for the second heat. Well, my thanks to Melissa Hollingsworth. She'll be back to bring us the action from Heat 2, the deciding run here in the men's skeleton in St. Moritz. Stay with us for lots more action.